In 1976, Rocky became America's feel-good story. But what you didn't see was the footage Stallone tried to hide for decades. There were scenes so dark, so violent, that the studio claimed they were accidentally burned in the 1980s. Stallone recently posted a photo that proved otherwise. The original Rocky wasn't a hero. He was something much darker. And the ending that nearly made it to theaters would have destroyed everything you thought you knew about this movie. The truth about what really happened on that set changes the entire story. On March 24, 1975, Sylvester Stallone sat inside a Los Angeles theater, watching a fight he thought would be a joke. Muhammad Ali versus Chuck Wepner wasn't supposed to be a real contest. Wepner had 10-to-1 odds against him. He was called the Beyond Bleeder, a journeyman fighter who was expected to go down fast. But then, something wild happened. Wepner knocked Ali down in round 9. And he didn't just survive the rest. He made it to round 15. Stallone couldn't believe it. The underdog had nearly taken down the king. As soon as the fight ended, he rushed home and locked himself in his tiny apartment. He didn't stop writing for 3.5 days. When he came out, he had a 96-page script that would change his life forever. At that time, Stallone had only $106 in his bank account. His car broke down. He was hungry. He couldn't even afford food for his dog. That dog, Butkus, was everything to him. Named after the football player Dick Butkus, the dog had been his only companion through months of failure. But desperation hit hard. He stood outside a liquor store with Butkus tied up, holding a sign that said $100. He ended up selling him for just $50 to a man he called Little Jimmy. It crushed him. Later, after he got paid $35,000 for Rocky, the very first thing he did was try to buy Butkus back. He offered $100, then $500, then $1,000. Little Jimmy said no every time. Finally, Stallone gave him $15,000. He got Butkus back, and Butkus would go on to appear in the first 2 Rocky movies. The dog was more than a pet now. He was part of the legend. But the original Rocky wasn't the feel-good story we know. In the first draft, Rocky was a thug, a real thug. He worked as a collector for loan sharks and had no remorse. Mickey, the trainer, was written as a bitter, racist old man. And Rocky didn't just lose the fight at the end. He threw it on purpose. He didn't want fame or victory. He just wanted to stay in the gutter. It was Stallone's wife, Sasha Chak, who read the script and said the words that changed everything. She told him, "I don't like it. Rocky seems so nasty." That line forced Stallone to rewrite the entire story. By the end, only about 10% of the original script remained. When United Artists saw the revised script, they loved it. But they didn't want Stallone to play Rocky. They had other names in mind: Robert Redford, Ryan O'Neal, Burt Reynolds, Nick Nolte, James Caan. The studio offered Stallone $20,000 for the script. He said no. They offered $100,000, then $125,000, then $250,000, then $360,000. This man who had just sold his dog for $50 turned down $360,000. He had one condition: he had to play Rocky, no one else. The studio told him he looked funny and talked funny, but he didn't care. He believed this was his only chance to be something. His agents were stunned. Craig T. Roomer and Larry Kubik ran his agency and were caught between a miracle and a meltdown. Their client was broke and refusing hundreds of thousands. Finally, they made a move no one in Hollywood had made before. They told the producers and studio, no Stallone, no script. They would pull it entirely. United Artists nearly walked away, but producers Irwin Winkler and Robert Chartoff had a secret clause. They could greenlight any project under $1.5 million without studio permission. So they said yes, but the studio slashed the budget from $2 million to just $1 million out of spite. Winkler and Chartoff had to mortgage their own homes to cover the $100,000 difference when the movie went over budget. Final cost, $1.1 million. And then came the casting chaos. They couldn't find their Adrian. Cher passed. Bette Midler passed. Susan Sarandon was called too pretty. Carrie Snodgrass, who had just been nominated for an Oscar, was the director's favorite. But she turned it down over money. She wanted more than the $35,000 they offered. That rejection nearly destroyed the timeline. With only 48 hours before shooting, Talia Shire walked in. The second Stallone saw her, he knew. She wasn't Irish like the original script called for. She was Italian-American. He changed Adrian's whole backstory on the spot. The brother, played by Harvey Keitel, was removed entirely and replaced by Paulie. The entire emotional core of the film changed in one audition. Carl Weathers came in to read for Apollo Creed and made a mistake that won him the role. He didn't know Stallone was the writer and star, so after reading with him, he complained, "I could do a lot better if you got me a real actor." Stallone wasn't offended. He was impressed. That cockiness was exactly what Apollo Creed needed. And when Weathers took off his shirt, Stallone had a mini-crisis. Weathers was 6'2", ripped, and an actual NFL linebacker. Stallone felt tiny at 5'10". He even said he felt like Pooh Bear. But when Weathers threw a few punches during a mock spar, Stallone saw everything he needed. He said, "Hired," right then. The movie had only 28 days to shoot. They had no permits. They shot guerrilla style in Philadelphia. They filmed entire scenes in one take before getting kicked out of buildings. Stallone's father was the timekeeper in the final fight. His brother sang on the streets. His dog was in the film. They had so little money that Rocky's big fight robe was 9 sizes too big. Instead of fixing it, Stallone added a line complaining about it in the script. The posters had him in the wrong color shorts, so they added dialogue pointing out the error. The skating scene was supposed to have 300 extras and daylight, but they didn't have money for skates, or ice time, or extras. So they rewrote it to be just Rocky and Adrian on the ice after hours. That change made it more intimate and more memorable. And the iconic steps scene? That was made possible by a man named Garrett Brown, who invented the Steadicam. Months earlier, he filmed his girlfriend running up the steps for fun. That test footage ended up being the model for one of the most iconic scenes in movie history. Brown ran with the camera while Stallone ran ahead. No effects, no retakes, just magic. And that final fight? They had maybe a few hundred extras in a place that was supposed to look like 8,000. They just moved the crowd around and shot from different angles. The lighting was low to hide the empty seats. The punches missed on purpose to avoid needing multiple takes. And when they filmed Rocky's quiet apartment scene, the building owner showed up to evict them. They finished the scene in one take and left. It was never supposed to work. A boxing movie made for just $1 million, starring a complete nobody who only had $106 left in his bank account. But in 1976, Rocky didn't just work. It shook the ground under Hollywood's feet. That tiny film turned every dollar into $225, pulling in $117.2 million in the US and $225 million worldwide. It crushed every other movie that year. The studio had so little faith in Stallone that they slashed the original $1.75 million budget, forcing producers to personally cover anything over the final $1 million. But what they created with that stripped-down budget would later be worth over $1.2 billion in today's money. Nobody saw it coming. And Stallone? He had the perfect excuse to cash out. Studios offered him up to $360,000 just for the script, on one condition: he couldn't play Rocky. They wanted Ryan O'Neal, or Burt Reynolds, or anyone but Stallone. He had less than $110 in the bank, but he kept saying no. He gambled everything, even risked losing the entire project, just to stay in the role. In the end, he got paid $20,000 to act and union-scale wages. It was a decision that changed his life and film history. What made this story even wilder was how it was made. The movie was shot in just 28 days. That's not a typo. 28 days, from January 9 to March 5, 1976. It was so rushed, the now iconic ice skating scene was rewritten because they couldn't afford extras, so they filmed in an empty rink on Thanksgiving. Director John Avildsen agreed to half his normal $100,000 salary. The whole crew worked for cheap, chasing back-end profit instead of upfront pay. And when it was done, they were $40,000 under budget. That's how raw and gritty it was. Then came the Oscars. Nobody expected Rocky to even be nominated. But it didn't just get nominated, it won. 10 nominations, 3 wins, Best Picture, Best Director, Best Editing. It beat Taxi Driver, Network, and All the President's Men. Critics were stunned. A film shot in 28 days, with an unknown lead and a skeleton budget, had crushed Hollywood's elite. The New York Daily News said it best. It was a reminder that the little guy could still win. But behind that inspirational ending we all remember, there was a much darker version. The original ending was quiet. Rocky and Adrian walked through an empty backstage tunnel, far from the cheers, picking up a crumpled American flag off the floor. There were no fireworks, no celebration, just 2 people walking away from the noise. The message was clear. Rocky didn't win the fight, but he won something more important. That haunting final shot, which was actually used for the movie poster, never made it into the movie. It was too bleak, too real. When the studio tested it with focus groups in late 1976, the response was brutal. People hated it. They said it was depressing, forgettable, didn't match the spirit of the film. America was already deep in recession, weighed down by bad news. The last thing people wanted from the movies was more sadness. That bad reaction nearly killed the film's Oscar chances. Director Avildsen and Stallone knew they had to change it, fast. So they reshot the ending, just weeks before the release. It cost them money they didn't have, but it saved the film. Producer Robert Chartoff later said that the original ending nearly destroyed the whole thing. He and Irwin Winkler had already mortgaged their houses to raise the last $100,000 for the $1.1 million budget. Had the film failed, they would have lost everything. Chartoff said he loved the idea that Rocky lost the fight, but still won. But audiences didn't get it. They needed something bigger, something they could cheer for. And it was that change, the last-minute rewrite, that made all the difference. Then came one of Hollywood's worst losses. In the 1980s, United Artists made the decision to burn the original Rocky ending footage. Not by accident, not by fire, just routine destruction. At the time, home video was new, DVDs didn't exist yet, and film reels were expensive to store. So they tossed them into the fire. Stallone found out years later, during the making of Rocky V, and was devastated. He had hoped to use the footage for a flashback. All that remained were a few black and white stills showing Rocky and Adrian walking alone, while Apollo gets carried off in victory. The alternate ending was gone forever. Stallone had fought hard to keep that original vision. He wrote the entire script in just 3 days in March 1975. To him, Rocky walking away quietly, choosing love over fame, was the true victory. His original script even had darker moments. Mickey was openly racist, and Rocky threw the fight on purpose, disgusted by the sport. But after the test screenings, he gave in. They reshot everything, bringing in family members to stand in as extras, saving every penny they could. That final shot of Rocky shouting Adrian's name as the crowd roars? It wasn't what Stallone wrote, but it became one of the most powerful endings in film history. The saddest part is that we'll never get to see the full version of what could have been. According to Stallone and MGM, all deleted footage and outtakes were incinerated sometime in the 1980s. MGM confirmed this to Stallone in 1990 when he asked for clips to use in Rocky V. He was told everything had been burned, gone. Only a few photos survived. The Lost Media Wiki later confirmed that there were at least 3 missing scenes: Rocky breaking a guy's ribs in front of Apollo, Adrian giving him hate mail and a fan shirt, and both fighters being carried out on fans' shoulders after the match. Those scenes were cut for time or money, and some were never even finished due to filming constraints. Even the way Rocky was filmed was chaotic. They didn't have permits. The famous steps scene. It was shot without permission. Stallone later said they filmed it quickly, before the police came. It was guerrilla filmmaking at its best. And because of that rushed, low-budget style, every deleted second would have been priceless. But it's all gone now. That destruction wasn't just about lost footage. It was the erasing of a version of Rocky that could have told a very different story. One afternoon in July 2017, Sylvester Stallone posted a photo that stunned Rocky fans. It showed a deleted moment from the original 1976 film. Rocky was facing off with Dipper, the guy who had bullied him and stolen his locker. Stallone called it the moment before Rocky knocks out Dipper. But that moment was never seen by audiences. The studio claimed the footage, along with most of the outtakes, was accidentally burned. That excuse raised eyebrows. These lost clips reportedly showed Rocky in violent scenes outside the ring, scenes that didn't fit the movie's hopeful tone. Crew members and film historians found it suspicious that such valuable film was stored so carelessly. To this day, only a few photos remain, and many believe that footage was destroyed on purpose. There was also a heartbreaking scene in Rocky Balboa from 2006 that never made it to the final cut. Paulie, played by Burt Young, walked into the alley behind Adrian's restaurant holding a painting. He started crying and shouting about how his life had been wasted. He screamed, "31 years I give him. 31 years freezing for what? It stinks. My life stinks." Then he broke down completely, saying, "Why didn't I die instead of my sister? I miss my sister, Rocco. I miss her. I really miss her." Burt Young later said cutting that scene was a mistake. That moment would have explained Paulie's behavior in the movie. He wasn't bitter just to be difficult. He was drowning in guilt. He had blamed himself for Adrian's early labor in Rocky II. But none of that made it to the screen. Then there was the original ending of Rocky V. It wasn't just different, it was devastating. Rocky was supposed to die. After the street fight with Tommy Gunn, Rocky would collapse. Adrian was pregnant at the time, and as Rocky's body shut down, he told her, "My hands are cold." She held them, trying to warm him. His last words were, "I can't wait to see my daughter. It's gonna be great." Then, his hand went limp. In the next scene, Adrian stood at his statue and told the world, "Rocky Balboa passed away early this morning." She said he proved that you didn't have to be born great to achieve greatness. Stallone scrapped the ending because it was too heavy. But the script still exists, and it shows how close Rocky came to being a tragic story instead of a triumphant one. Some of the most emotional scenes from the Rocky series never saw the light of day because the studios wanted to protect Rocky's image. There was a scene in the first movie where Rocky had a full breakdown. It was unscripted. Stallone just broke down on camera, and the cameraman reportedly wept while filming. Director John Avildsen said Stallone went to a place so raw that it didn't even feel like a movie anymore. But the studio thought it was too dark. They cut it, worried that audiences wanted a hero, not someone lost in guilt and shame. But the most disturbing part of this entire story is what United Artists did behind the scenes. During the 1980s, they destroyed the original outtakes. Stallone tried to recover them for the anniversary editions, but the studio told him they had been incinerated. That decision came at a time when studios were saving money by throwing away film reels. But Rocky wasn't just any film. It had already become iconic. Some believed the footage was destroyed on purpose because it didn't fit the family-friendly image of the franchise. Stallone later said, "Some things are better left in the alley. That's where that scene belongs." But fans never stopped wondering what was on those reels. The entire Rocky franchise began in March 1975. Stallone wrote the script in just 3.5 days after watching the fight between Muhammad Ali and Chuck Wepner. Producers offered him $360,000 for the script, but he had one condition: he had to star in it. At the time, he had only $106 in his bank account and had sold his dog just to survive. He turned down the money. The movie was made for $960,000, which was less than what toothpaste commercials cost back then. That tiny investment grew into a $1.7 billion franchise. Stallone got $35,000 and 10% of profits, which eventually brought him $2.5 million. But he never owned the rights, not a single piece of it. On July 17, 2022, Stallone posted an image that shocked Hollywood. It showed producer Irwin Winkler as a snake with a knife for a tongue. The caption read, "After Irwin controlling Rocky for over 47 years, I really would like to have at least a little what's left of my rights back, before passing it on to only your children." Stallone later deleted the post, but the damage was done. The world saw his pain. He called it a painful subject that eats at my soul. He followed up with another post calling the Winkler family parasitical and accusing them of living off the Italian stallion for nearly 50 years. Irwin Winkler was born on May 25, 1931. He was 45 when Rocky came out, and he's 93 now. He still controls the entire franchise. He won the Oscar for Best Picture and has been nominated 4 times. Despite Stallone writing, acting, and directing in the Rocky films, Winkler owns it all. He has allegedly blocked Stallone from making spin-offs and director's cuts, and he's now passing full control to his sons, David and Charles Winkler. Stallone built the legacy, but another family is inheriting the fortune. The Rocky films have earned over $1.7 billion worldwide, with Rocky IV alone making $127.8 million in the US. Yet Stallone doesn't receive ongoing royalties. He said in 2019 that he was furious about the original deal. He had signed away ownership for a small check and a share of profits. That old Hollywood contract gave everything to the producers. Lawyers today use this case as a warning for how creators can be locked out of the very stories they give their lives to. And it didn't stop with rights. Winkler also blocked Stallone from releasing director's cuts. There were whole scenes, never seen by fans, that Stallone wanted to bring back. In July 2022, when MGM announced a Drago spin-off without telling Stallone, he lashed out. He called Winkler remarkably untalented and slammed the decision to exclude him. Even though Stallone had been the heart of the franchise, he had no say. Winkler controlled Rocky, and now even Creed. The story didn't belong to its creator anymore. There's also the story of the Rocky statue. In 1980, Stallone commissioned a 400-pound bronze statue standing 12 feet 8 inches tall. It was made by sculptor A. Thomas Schomburg and used in Rocky III. It became Philadelphia's most controversial piece of art. When Stallone offered $100,000 for restoration in 2006, it reopened old wounds. The statue had been moved more than 12 times. Each move cost the city money. Meanwhile, similar statues were being sold at auction for over $403,000. Philadelphia called it worthless art, but spent more on storage and transport than most museums spend on masterpieces. In 2006, the city's art commission almost exploded during a public vote about the statue. It passed by a narrow 6-2 margin. University of the Arts president Miguel Angel Corzo even threatened to resign if the statue was placed near the museum. He said it lowered the city's standards. Art professor Mo Brooker said, "It's not a work of art, and it doesn't belong there." But on September 8, 2006, the statue was unveiled again. Fans traveled from Ohio and slept in cars just to be there. City officials celebrated. They said no other symbol represented hard work like Rocky did. But critics were furious. The art world lost that battle. Even worse, the city once lost the statue completely. In 2002, it was put in storage during the Veterans Stadium demolition. For 3 years, it sat forgotten in a warehouse. Tourists came to Philadelphia and couldn't find it. Tour guides didn't know where it was. The base got damaged. The statue gathered dust. City council members got angry letters from around the world. People wanted to know where Rocky had gone. It was a 1,400-pound bronze statue, and somehow the city managed to misplace it. It became a symbol of government failure. But Rocky still rose above it. The statue now gets around 4 million visitors a year. That's more than double the Liberty Bell, which gets 1.68 million. The only thing that beats it is Independence National Historical Park with 5 million. But Rocky does that with just a statue and a flight of steps. In 2023, Philadelphia had 25.8 million visitors, generating $6.6 billion. And Rocky was a major reason. Stallone even donated another $100,000 to open a Rocky shop next to the statue. The shop's profits now help fund museum projects. And that worthless movie prop is now a tourism goldmine.